How do you currently manage your podcast workflow? What are some of the tools that have helped or actually frustrated you the most?
Are your management tools sabotaging your podcast production or are they helping to make it better? Let's find out on this episode of Behind the Workflow. Hi, Tally.
Hey, Simona.
Welcome to this week's episode of Behind the Workflow. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Yes, me too.
We are going to have a lot of fun. This is our second episode, and we're talking about how management tools streamline podcast production, which is interesting because we wanted this podcast to be not so technical in terms of like the how to behind podcasting, but more so behind the workflow, hence the name. The first thing that I want to talk about is overall workflow automation. And I'm curious your thoughts on this because when it comes to your workflow, especially as a podcaster, as a creator, as a business owner, the workflow that we have is everything. It's so important. It's what keeps us aligned. It's what keeps us on track. It keeps us on goal, on target, all of that. What have you noticed in terms of like the importance of workflow automation right off the bat, especially for podcast production and the tools that help streamline it?
So, based on the podcasters and the podcast managers, agencies that I've been talking to for the past year, one thing that I noticed is that the ones that had like their workflow down, like I got this, I know what I'm doing, they were saving so much time, like during that whole pre-production phase, right? And then the ones that they were actually like trying to figure it out every single episode, they were spending an average of 9 hours per week on like that specific episode. So, really, like, that's a lot of time to be spending on an episode. Besides, like the recording and everything, that's just like planning and like trying to make sure all the tasks are in place.
1000%. And as a producer myself, and even as a business owner, podcasting or not, using different automations and different workflows has been so key in my own business. And I know also like in your business and all the things that you manage. When we think about like workflow overall, especially when it comes to podcast production, you need to know what you're doing and when you're doing it. And so, one of the things that I've learned over the years is that the people who have the most disorganized or chaotic workflows tend to have a disorganized and chaotic process and a disorganized and chaotic overall business. But then, even more than that, it gets confusing for clients. It gets confusing for guests. And so the whole process kind of gets a little bit broken and people can't really follow along. And I'll give you this example. So when I first started my podcast production agency, we used to put everything in Trello. Obviously, we've since moved the podcast production to Northflow. And it was great. Like Trello was great for what it was. And people used to tell us, oh, everything is so organized. Oh, everything is, this, that, and the other. And it was great. And I loved it. But then as my business continued to grow, continued to change and evolve in different areas, the workflow that we had didn't really work for us anymore in Trello. And I was finding that some clients were using it, some clients were not. People were finding it a little bit chaotic. And I think that it just speaks to as you continue to grow, your processes have to grow with you. Just because something works for a little bit doesn't mean that it works forever. You know what I mean? And so, anyways, it's just a really interesting sort of thought because I believe that having your workflow and finding ways to automate the work that we do day in, day out is really, really important. And obviously, one of the reasons why we created Northflow for this. Now, again, this is not a podcast like just about Northflow, but we have to loop it in. Maybe we should talk a little bit about how Northflow has key management tools for podcasters and why that's important. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's great. One thing too, just to mention, like, I read, I believe it was a 2023 research that Zapier did that by like basically automating your workflow, you could reduce production time for like I think it was by 40%. So that's like freeing up a lot of time for you to actually be able to focus, like in your case, your clients or their content, and if for just a podcaster, just to create more content, get more content out there.
You can create two podcasts. No, I'm just kidding.
Exactly, basically.
I love that.
Why not?
So exactly. Over the years, I've seen so many different, softwares, project management softwares, and all that people have used to help them with their podcast production workflow. I've used Trello for clients. I've used ClickUp. People have used Monday, Basecamp. Like every single project management tool could totally be helpful in that case. But it's also one of the big wins that I believe that Northflow has is that its sole purpose is to be that project management software. And I think that's really, really, really important in terms of key management tools for podcasters. And I would love to know what you think about that.
Yes. So with Northflow, everything is one place. So, they don't have to be juggling like, Google Drive, emails, jumping from Trello, and then going to record somewhere else. It's more streamlined from the time that you get that idea, you put it there on your Northflow dashboard until the time that you're about to record. That's when you would go to your Riverside or Descript, wherever you're recording, and then that would be sent back to Northflow, and then you can finalize the steps all within Northflow. And that I know, like most podcasters, they don't actually struggle with the creative part. It's actually like the logistics behind, like, how do I keep track of where everything is at? Like, how do I know that I'm not missing like a communication if you're interviewing a guest, that you know where their bio is at, so you can prepare your questions before you
Hmm.
start talking to them. So that's been like one of the common things that we hear from different people that we've talked to in the past. Like, is it recorded? Is it edited? Like from a client perspective, like what's the process? What stage is that episode? And
Mm.
is it reliable? Like, can I know for sure that this is going to go live on the date that I'm planning for it to go live, on the date that I'm planning to start talking about it on this, like on Facebook and Instagram and so on?
Mhm. Exactly, and so what I'm hearing you say, if we link it back to our overall episode today, how these management tools streamline podcast production, ultimately, you're saving yourself so much time. You're saving yourself so much headspace in terms of planning what needs to happen on what day. This software, this tool is already populating it for you. All you do is you pick your publish date and then everything backtracks for you, right? So you know exactly what step in the process needs to happen by what time. And so the biggest challenge that I see podcasters have every single day is time, right? I don't have enough time for this. So, how do you make yourself have more time? Well, you build a more efficient process. Your perception, your perspective of all the work that we've done together over the last, I would say like, 6 to 8 months and so on, all the conversations you've been having for the last year. If you were to sort of talk about and like pinpoint the most efficient podcast management workflow, what does that look like? And we can totally go back and forth on this one. It doesn't have to, like, I'm just so curious of your thoughts to start.
No, yes, for sure. Like a well structured workflow, like it would save you time, right? At the end of the day. So, one of the workflows that I know and I've heard from people and like being able to go in and check on Northflow, it's like the planning. So, that's where you do like all the brainstorming,
Mhm.
the topics, and like you outline if you need any special questions that you need to ask, you can outline all of those out. And then, like that, the second part would be like the pre production. So, this is when like you're scheduling the guest and you're prepping those questions, just making sure like you dotted your I's and crossed your T's, and
Yeah.
you're gathering assets as well. So that whole part is like the pre-production and just like getting everything that you need before it actually goes into the production. And then like the production part, that's when you would be like recording, and then that's where it goes back to you, Simona, like with the editing, and then like finalizing the content and just creating like a whole distribution, and like how we're going to be promoting this, like what's going to go where, creating that content, like the social media content, like, and not just that, but also like preparing and planning where it's going to go, like is this going to go on Threads or Instagram or X and so on. And then
Exactly.
like also like the next part to it would be like, how can you track this is live, all the social media post is done, how can we take the learnings, like what we learned from this, what's going well, like all that analytics, and apply it back to the next episode, like what have we done right and what can we fix, right?
100%. And what I love about this and having a podcast management system and process that actually works for you If you're like me and you have every intention of trying to get ahead and like staying a few episodes ahead, it can be a little bit challenging. Other than be in my production business, we're always like weeks ahead. For my own content, like I sometimes record the episode the day before it goes live. Okay. And that's just the reality. Like, it's just is what it is because sometimes it happens like that. But when you know the exact steps that need to happen, and even if you've been doing this for a long time, you will know, all of the different things in your process. But there's something really nice about having all of your different episodes laid out. So let's say your next 4 episodes, if you want to start working ahead, you know the exact stage that every single one of those episodes is on, and you don't need to guess of where you're at in the process. So let's say you want to work 4 episodes ahead. And one day you want to do all of your scripts. One day you want to do all of your talking points. One day you want to do all of your editing. You can do that simultaneously and manage the process of each episode at the same time. And I think that's a really key piece for having a podcast project management system that actually works, because your workflow has to work for you. If it's not working for you, it's going to create more chaos, more time delays, and just more stress. And nobody wants that, right? We want to be creative. We want to be having fun. We want to be putting out the content that we know that we should be putting out and need to be putting out. But you can't do that if you're always worrying and wondering or stressed about how you're going to get to the finish line with all of the other things that you have going on.
And there's some great project management tools out there. Like they actually have some really great features, but they're not built for podcasters. So they're still having to stitch things around and like hack your workflow to be able to make it work. And if one tiny thing changes along that workflow, like if one app that you're working with changes, your whole workflow just goes down the stream. Just it doesn't work, like it breaks. And that's like why we built Northflow, to basically keep everything in one place, and you wouldn't have to be creating different hacks to make it work at the end of the day.
Exactly. And one piece that I've noticed, I was kind of talking about this at the beginning of the episode, especially, is the client piece. I've noticed with my clients that each client has a totally different process. Like when I first started my business, everyone was on pretty much the same package, right? Like everyone wanted the exact same thing. And as I've continued to grow and evolve, one client might want more strategy, another client might want more production work, another client might want social media content. And so it's fine, and like that is totally great. Like I love that. And also I was finding it really challenging to manage my own process because everything that I had built in Trello was for one specific package. And then when you have clients that just need, a basic editing and some show notes, I had to develop a second process for that now, to take all of that content and like share it with them and have them review it and so on. So I had to like recreate the process. And so, what I'm trying to say is, when you have a platform that just automatically does that and each show can be customized for the exact process that you need, it becomes a game changer, right? Because you're not reinventing the wheel. Everything is already done and there for you. And your clients have a better user experience. When your clients have a better experience, they tend to stick around longer. They feel less stressed. They will recommend people to your business. So, overall, these are all really, really good things. Do you have any final thoughts, Tally, before we wrap up our episode today?
Yes, the right workflow and the right tools can make all of the difference. That would be like my final thought. So, whenever you're looking for a tool out there, make sure it's tailored to you, to your industry.
I love that. Thank you, Tally, for being here with me today. This is super fun.
Looking forward to the next one.
Me too. And if you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it on one of the podcast apps, leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. And don't forget to book your free demo so that you can explore Northflow, everything it has to offer. And we will see you next time behind the workflow.